This is the Balanced Growth Show with Dr. Travis Perry, helping successful business professionals like you achieve balance in their lives.
Welcome to another episode of the Balanced Growth Show. I'm your host, Dr. Travis Perry. Today, we have the privilege of having Dan Beck with us in studio, virtually here in the podcast. Dan is a serial entrepreneur who has built and sold a number of businesses. His current endeavor is a fintech 401k solution designed specifically for small businesses. When not busy at work, Dan loves spending time with his 5 kids and extremely patient and loving wife. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Excited to learn about you, your story, and hear about how you're now involved in fintech. It is a world of many players, and it's getting more confusing as the day. I often get questions about this as far as AI is concerned and other solutions, but I'm glad that you're here to help us and talk to us a little bit about how you've been able to keep balance as you've grown your company. So let's start there. Tell us your story. Tell us how you've been able to, come from your beginnings to where you are today and kind of fill in those details.
Sure. So I had a very, blue collar upbringing. So I was taught to just work hard, learned how to stretch a penny. But when it came to, other aspects of financial wellness, it was more, a college course that I took was really the first time that I kind of had exposure to, investing, saving, stock markets, all of that. And I really got excited about it. So I even, kind of thought about being a financial advisor, shadowed somebody for a day. But then, eventually I landed in a career doing, video and film stuff and really enjoyed it, but it was always feast or famine. And I was, essentially trading time for money. I was quite successful, leading up to, 2008. I had a number of clients and, many of them were in the home building space. And that was one of the markets hit hardest by that whole thing. Almost overnight, I saw, a lot of my accounts receivable. Basically, I knew it was going to be uncollected. I paid, the contractors that I worked with, and then was stuck with about, $60,000 in debt. Trying to figure out how to make a mortgage payment, how to even put food on the table. I remember that time, my very patient wife coming to me and just saying, "Hey, do we have even like $100 to go and buy some groceries?" And my parents offered to help, but me being stubborn and also part of that upbringing meant no, I got to figure this out. So a lot of hard lessons were learned at that time, and it was a very defining moment for me. Both in kind of my relationship with family, but then also when it came to money and business and everything else. And so I set out to kind of reinvent myself, and I started some product-based businesses. Did quite well, and built a number of different brands, sold some companies. At one point we had a consultancy in China. We were doing a lot of work in importing from China, Myanmar, Pakistan, Italy, across the board. And it was in that process of building companies that I had employees that would occasionally come to me saying, "Hey, can I get a payday advance?" or something of that nature. And I always saw that as an opportunity to kind of give them some advice, having been through those moments where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work. I thought, hey, a 401k would be a good way to, help these employees start saving for retirement, because if there's a match, that's a pretty good incentive. But when I looked at the options out there, there just really wasn't anything. And so, a couple of weeks into the process, I learned what fiduciary meant, and decided as a small business owner, I didn't want to be a fiduciary. And then abandoned the process. And so it was a few years after that my brother and I, we were business partners through most of these endeavors. We really looked at, hey, why is it that the 401k space is, so difficult for small businesses, and really realized that there was a pretty big opportunity out there. So we started building, a full tech solution. And essentially what we have now is a small business owner, such as myself, then I could go and set up a plan in 15 minutes. I could connect it to my payroll system. So all the ongoing administration is also fully automated. And that's where we are. One thing that's pretty significant about what we do is we found a really good way to work with financial advisors, payroll providers, and other individuals that work with small business owners and their employees.
I love that. Remind us the name of your company.
It's 401 Go.
Oh, very cool. So now you understand the pains of being a business owner, and for multiple businesses, plus of your personal experience, those two things together really have been the impetus of beginning 401 Go. And so let's talk about balance as you've been doing this. Why is it important? I mean, you're a married man with 5 kids. You grew up in a large family, like I did, and like we have now, my own family. So I get it. Like, family's important to you, but why is it important that as you're growing this business, that you have such great balance?
So one thing that when I kind of reinvented myself and had that kind of entrepreneurial drive and started building businesses, there was always kind of that moment in the back of my head where I remember, laying in bed with my wife and, young daughter at the time, and just thinking, I have no idea if this is going to work. Like, am I going to be able to, like, are we going to have a house a month from now? And just thinking, none of that matters. Like, if we're living in a tent, I knew it wasn't going to come to that, but I knew that those people that I had at that point in time were the only thing that mattered. And so a lot of the drive and determination and the way that I built businesses, I really tried to de-risk everything as much as possible. This is the first business where I have outside investors. I just didn't want the responsibility of having, other people's money that I was responsible for. And so a lot of decisions were based off of that moment of, just a fear and kind of the emotional ties to money. And it really kind of catalyzed everything going forward in terms of how I built those businesses. And it was easy, like when things got really busy and, sometimes I would have to make sacrifices with maybe, time with the family. I could tell myself I'm doing this for the family. But then there was a point where I had some big exits that were, of good enough size. I could have quit working. I could have retired. And suddenly, it was a little bit harder because that moment that I'd been working for financial independence, for security for my family and everything, that was in hand. And I kind of realized at that point that in some ways I was using kind of my need to provide for the family as an excuse for some of my own selfish needs, that I wanted to grow and achieve and do things. Because suddenly when, I had the choice, I still chose to stay busy, to stay very involved in business. And I feel like I always tried to maintain balance. I love playing with my kids. I'm a kid at heart. So I feel like in a lot of ways, it's not too hard to have balance, but I do know that my priorities certainly were misaligned. And a lot of those things that made me successful in business don't work in the family setting. And so that's really where, and I'd say it's only been in the last 5 or 6 years that it's kind of, hit me in the face now that I have teenagers and, family life has just become that much more intensive, that I didn't have the balance that I wanted. And I'm still working to achieve that balance. And I think I'll be working on it forever.
Well, I think the most important part is that you are putting your priorities first, and there is a balance there. And what I have heard from you in this short podcast up to now is that you're making decisions based on those priorities, like your kids, your family, being able to really know how to provide for them. While that was out of fear at the moment, this doesn't seem to be the case now, right? You're not in a fear-driven place, yet those priorities still remain very solid, from what I'm hearing from you. And that's a place where I think people maybe misunderstand that we're motivated from a lot of different reasons. Fear is a very base motivator, and it's a very short-term motivator.
Yeah.
If you're in fear a very long time, you're not. So many things will unravel. But a lot, and I know this from working with so many financial advisors. A lot of financial advisors are motivated because of either a fear of failure, that they're going to fail somehow, or a fear of success, that maybe they become too successful that now, what are other people thinking about them when they live in a gated community or drive that nice car or whatever it might be. And I've also found that their clients, financial advisors, can relate to their clients who struggle where they're afraid of losing money they invest, or they're afraid of having too much that now they have to pay the IRS or deal with all of the estate planning, and the list goes on. So I think you bring up something that's really important to discuss when it comes to balance. Why are you motivated? Balance. Where is that coming from? Is it fear? Is it, some other internal drive? So, we're not necessarily going to go that direction right now, but I think a lot of people, if they truly have long-term balance, which is your goal as well, they find what it is their highest priorities are, and they make that their drive. That is their internal motivator to keep them long-term. And that's very successful. Dan, as an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, someone who started and sold, and you're working on, this latest 401go company, how have you scaled this current business? What are you doing with this fintech that is allowing you to grow while trying to keep that long-term balance in sight?
I'm very fortunate that we have an incredible team, and it really started with incredible co-founders. So my brother, we've been working together for well over a decade. Have learned to work well together. I know that he knows his domain, and I trust him, and he knows that I know my domain, and he trusts me. And then, our other co-founder, Jared, we're like brothers. And so it allows us to really kind of focus on our respective areas, and grow the company. So we each know that I don't have to worry, I don't have to check. And it's the most incredible feeling in the world, because, really those first businesses that I built, and when I was in kind of the video and film industry, and, doing, a lot of freelance work, you kind of, it becomes a very lonely world, and that everything falls on you. And in those small businesses as well, everything fell on me. Now that, we're venture backed and we have some outside investors, there's certainly this weight that's maybe heavier than it was before, because I know that there's a lot of people that have put money on what it is we're doing and on this vision that we have as a company. And there's people who've left higher paying jobs and have made major career changes, have moved across the country to come be a part of this team. And that's that sense of responsibility is heavier than anything that I felt before. But really the way that, I think I've been able to kind of maintain that is I'm honest. I try to be more honest about my feelings with, number one, my co-founders, but then especially the team, and just changing the way that, I used to kind of ignore my feelings, and just felt like, hey, they just get in the way. Like everything should be analyzed and factual. And in a way I kind of, applauded myself for my ability to just basically take my feelings and put them in a box. And I've had to learn in the last little while how to really kind of listen to them and understand what are those motivating factors. And in so doing, it helps me understand, the motivating factors for others around me. Some people are here because what we're doing is amazing and exciting. Other people are here because they need a job. And, one motivation isn't more noble than another, but it's important to understand everybody's respective motivation, so that, we can kind of make it coalesce and come together and propel us in a positive direction. So, we've seen significant growth. We've always had incredible growth. We have almost zero churn. And again, it's just because I've got, amazing people that I work with.
I find that there's two areas of building business, and you're either building the offense with marketing and advertising, right? And you're driving sales, or you're building the defense, and that is operations. It's, which includes HR and, the actual business. If that's a service or if that's a product, it's your fulfillment, right? So operations and fulfillment. And what I'm hearing from you is that defense is your best offense. And, we can have this discussion back and forth, but sometimes it's the offense is the best defense and vice versa. But I love that you're talking about your team and trusting your gut, maybe give us an idea of when you've either ignored your feelings, it didn't work out so great, or on the positive side where you've learned to kind of lean into those gut feelings, and how that's helped you to guide your team, your choice.
Yeah.
You can choose the positive or negative example on this, but anything come to mind that you can explain?
Yeah, early in the founding of the company, there were actually 4 founders, and the fourth, he was a kind of a longtime friend. Unfortunately, that's no longer the case. And I'd never gone through anything like that before. Part of it is just I was always very kind of cautious about anybody that I got into business with. I obviously knew my brother when we got into business together, but having this other co-founder there, there was a lot of turmoil. There were a lot of things that weren't working well. And I think it's easy to just say, "Oh, that was all their problem." Look at us, we're successful. He's the one that had to, had to go and find something else. He just wasn't cut out for this. But I knew that there were a number of factors and things that I did that kind of led to that situation, and a lot of it was not really understanding kind of his feelings, not understanding some of the emotional aspects of what goes into entrepreneurship, and the fact that I'd already been doing it for a decade at that point. And so for me, a lot of the fear that's associated with starting a new venture and going out on your own, raising funds, all those things that are wrapped up in entrepreneurship, I wasn't sensitive enough to that. And so, regardless of the outcome, regardless of who's right or wrong, I knew that there was a lot I had to do to improve, who I was, and my leadership abilities. And so again, I think a lot of it was just learning to listen to kind of my gut and my emotion, and let that be the guide. And some of the time, letting go of it's hard because in many ways, I have an incredible drive that, I'm going to make it, or I'm going to die trying, and I think in a lot of ways that can be positive, but it also could be negative, because if you're pointed in the wrong direction, you're just running as hard as you possibly can, you just get to the wrong place that much quicker. And some of the time, pausing to reflect, pausing to, reassess priorities, really looking at everybody and everything around you is sometimes hard when you just want to run. And so I think that's the other thing too that I learned is really that even if I see competition just taking off and going, man, I want to be growing at that rate, or we could be doing this and this and this. Being comfortable with just kind of the slow, steady journey was really hard for me to do. But that time was really kind of smacked me in the face and just told me, you know what, there's another way to do things. And just kind of that like growth at all costs, super aggressive, gritty, type A, personality that's oftentimes, kind of sought after within the business world, isn't necessarily the best approach.
You bring up some really great points here. That the best approach isn't to just blow everything off and go for it for a long period of time. Because I think that's the misunderstanding of so many people is you can't grow a business, or you can't start a business as an entrepreneur and have balance. You have to throw balance out the window so that you can live under your desk and eat, breathe, and sleep your business while everything else goes to pot, right? That we've interviewed over 1,000 business owners and found that no, there are people who actually will suggest and say the only way they could grow the business long-term was because they kept their balance and they had a great team. They were able to delegate and able to create what you have been able to do there at 401 Go. The other thing that I think I want to ask more about is partnerships. My goodness, we have all been in that position where something isn't working out, even if you've done the best to try to set this up. I've studied marital partnerships, marriage for a long time. And what we've come to find is that when people are on the same team, going the same direction, they have the same expectations, they know their boundaries, like you mentioned earlier with your brother and your now co-founder of 401 Go, that things work well. And I've had times in my life where even really good friends, we've had to split ways on things, business wise, events, etc. And it's been because of that. It's been because not aligned anymore. We're not on the same, team. We're not going the same direction, having the same values. Talk to me about what has been good and how maybe we can avoid some of those getting off in the rough patches with potential business partnerships in the future.
I think the best thing about having partners, and especially when there's a level of trust, is that they can be a dissenting view, or they can offer, two minds are greater than one. But that's not the case if one of those minds refuses to believe that maybe alternative ideas could be a possibility. And I feel like in some ways, I had the benefit of multiple repeat successes with businesses, and so oftentimes when that happens, you begin to think, I'm the secret ingredient. I know all the answers. It's if people just listen to me, everybody would be better off. And so it's a very prideful point of view, obviously, but it's tremendously damaging as well, from a growth standpoint, because if you have all the right answers, it doesn't matter the team that you surround yourself with, unless they're a bunch of yes men that say the exact same thing that you want them to say. And oftentimes, once they identify that's the type of leadership, the people that want to succeed there, they become yes men. And so even if they have a dissenting view that may be beneficial to hear, they're not going to voice it. And so, that again, kind of that experience with that early founder, it really made me decide to eat like a whole humble pie, not just a slice, but a whole humble pie, to really realize that there's not, there's a million good ideas, and there's a dozen different ways to get from point A to point B. And it's important to, surround yourself with a team of people that have different perspectives, that see things from a different, viewpoint. So, I think one of our blindnesses, my brother and I, we kind of have a very similar upbringing, and also even from a career standpoint, we've been very successful as entrepreneurs. But Jared, the other co-founder, he came from corporate America. He came from kind of the old guard 401k space. Like there's, very defined rules and processes. And in fact, the way he got involved is when we were kind of contemplating this idea of building a 401k platform, we started consulting different people, and everyone just kept saying, it can't be done. You're stupid. Don't do it. And Jared was one of those individuals that said, you can't do this. And we're like, can we pay you to tell us why? And so we hired him as a consultant for about 3 months. And it was really hard for him to transition from kind of that corporate mentality to what it is that we're doing. But I also know that a lot of the reason for our success and the fact that we have such low churn, we have an incredible customer service, is because he does have the rigor of kind of, that corporate America experience working, in a big organization with thousands of employees. And he can bring some of that level of organization to what it is we're doing from an operations perspective. And, even though there's times where I'm like, I don't know if that's the right way, it's his domain. I need to let him explore that. And I've been proven wrong so many times that, now I'm the first to, like, if they're like, no, this is the way it is, I back up, because they're the experts in their area. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is pride can really damage those relationships. And oftentimes pride follows success. And so, those who have a lot of success are oftentimes going to be, it's that same success that could be their downfall.
Yeah, kind of a two-edged sword there. I appreciate you mentioning that. And to kind of move this into a different direction, kind of sides, we're not leaving that, but kind of bouncing off of this operations thing. I want to look at a little bit of your success has been incredible. What you've done, what you've learned over time, you've reinvented yourself, you've been able to build a business. Let's talk about some of your struggles with building this business without, losing this balance. I know in the pre-show, we talked a little bit about boundaries and burnout and emotional and psychological burnout with, managing a company of the size. Talk to us a little bit about what would you say your biggest struggles are with, not losing this balance.
Mm-hmm. There's, in this role, I'm the CEO of a fast growing company. I'm, a board member. I answer to shareholders. Have teams and, do one-on-ones. And then at the same time, I have a family. I have teens that are going through teen stuff. It's very difficult. I have a wife that's, struggling to kind of find her place in the family and everything else. And so, there's plenty of challenges. And even if things were going really well, nothing's perfect. And so it's easy to find fires to put out or things that need to happen, in the business side of things or the family side of things. And it's easy to kind of lose yourself in all of that, where, this happened kind of earlier this year where I was being pulled very heavily in two different directions. We were going through some growth spurts and a lot of hiring and changing of people and roles and responsibilities. Then also at home, there was a lot of, that needed a lot of attention as well. And I about collapsed several times. I mean, there were times where I'm like, this is it. I'm losing my mind. Like, call up the hospital or whatever, let them know I'm on the way. And I had to, kind of take a step back and reprioritize, mindfulness and things that are really matter to me. So, I love mountain biking, and, it's, there's a lot of business reasons why I need to be mountain biking at least once a week. I go to the gym in the morning. I make sure, and I've done it more now than ever. I make sure that no matter how much time I have, I'm going to spend 10 to 15 minutes at the end of my workout, sitting in the sauna with some headphones in, just trying to meditate. I'm terrible at it. I don't know if I'll ever be able to meditate, but I still try. And I see, trying to quiet my mind, trying to have just a moment where, I'm not being overwhelmed with decisions or different things, is really beneficial. And so I think that's probably the harder part. Is it's really easy to get wrapped up in everyone else's problems or a bunch of things that need to be fixed, and lose yourself along the way and kind of lose. And at the same time, it's kind of like, Covey, when he talks about, sharpening the saw. If I don't take time to stop and sharpen the saw, if I don't take time for myself, I'm not doing anybody any good. And, I that came to a head, a few times just recently. So I still struggle with that. I'd love to say I have the answers, but I don't. But I am more aware of how dangerous it can be, not taking that time for myself.
Yeah, good for you. We're friends now. We both mountain bike, so we can hang out. But yeah, my wife knows the difference between the non-mountain bike Travis and the after mountain bike Travis. Like it's a whole different guy.
Oh, it really is. I mean, there's times where I'm like in just a terrible funk, and then I come back for mountain biking, and it's like I'm a little kid. I'm just, going a mile, a million miles an hour, and just so happy and high on life. It's incredible.
And the correlation here is that I really want to point out is that the things that tend to be our highest priorities in life, even if we make small amounts of time for them, they don't have to be these great quantity, but if we make amounts of time, even small, they will have big impact on us overall. We try to sometimes, I think, especially as Americans, especially in this linear time frame that we're in this modern society, we try to dissect parts of our life out and, really emphasize this or the other. But as we can see ourselves as a whole, and holistic, advisors out there talking about holistic planning all the time. Well, holistic life planning, holistic balance of what we're talking about here, even those pieces can have a great impact on how we think, the way that we can process information, because we're not in front of a screen, for heaven's sake. We can go to the mountain or get to the gym or go on a run, go swimming, whatever it is that you do that isn't work, has a great impact. So I typically see spiritual health, physical and mental health, and time with family. Those things of which you've brought up here today, that as you make time for those, that is how you will feel balance. So I love that you're able to share this with us today. We haven't gotten deep into how 401go can help businesses, but I know that you do help financial advisors help their businesses. Maybe give us a quick spot on that and how advisors can find you.
ever since I started, kind of building businesses, like I've fallen in love with what I call Main Street America. It's that mom and pop shop. It's the small business where employees are family. Like we spend so much time with the team, and I have, some of my best friends are. I joke with my kids that I have to pay all my friends, but I've had a lot of great friendships come out of those work relationships, and it's exciting to be able to empower that at a much higher level. And all day, every day, we're working with small businesses that really care about the people that they work with, and to be a part of powering that. And at the same time, like financial advisors, they get into it not to be, technical operators or salespeople. They get into it because they want to help people, because they're passionate about, finances, and they know that that is something that is in such dire, need and demand. And we're able to help. And so in many ways, like with our platform, we have a financial wellness suite built into it. There's a lot of, we've completely reimagined really what a 401k is. And we think about it more as financial independence as a service, because even, the very definition of 401k is so much different for my father than it is for me, and will likely be for my kids. And so we need to reassess what that means. And that's really what we're doing with 401 Go. And a big part of that is that tech is not the only solution for a lot of people, especially when it comes to, probably the hardest part of financial planning is the behavior side of things. Laying out the plan on paper is one thing, but actually executing it, there's so much emotional aspects involved in, executing a financial plan, that's really where those financial advisors, that human element, wins over tech every day, any day. And so I know some advisors, they're afraid of AI, they're afraid of fintech in many ways. But I believe they have they'll have a big impact, and the impact's going to be even bigger now that we have these additional tools and technology and everything else. And so that's what 401 Go does, is we enable those advisors to pursue a segment of the 401k market that's really been inaccessible, because all the solutions they have are really built for corporate America. And that just doesn't work with a business of 20 to 100 employees. And that's really the market that we focused on.
Love it. Where can they find you? How do they get in contact with you to learn more?
So I love connecting on LinkedIn. You can find me there, Daniel Beck. And then you can find out about 401 Go at 401go.com, 401go.com, pretty easy. And yeah, we have an amazing team that works specifically with financial advisors. We'd love to talk with you.
Love it. Thanks for being on the show today. Appreciate your insights, sharing with us the struggles, the successes, and everything in between that we could get to in the short amount of time. It's been a pleasure. And, if you've enjoyed as much as I have, please like, share, subscribe, do all the things. Maybe there's someone out there who needs to hear about Dan's story that you know of, that you could share with on social or text or wherever you are listening to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you, Dan. Thank you again for being on
Travis.
the Balanced Growth Show.
My pleasure.
And remember, until next time, listeners, we love you. We're grateful for you. Definitely subscribe and review our podcast. Give us great ratings out there to help to share this message with the world. We are the only podcast in the world talking about balance and growing your business at the same time. Although it's not mutually exclusive, it is very possible. And until next time, the next episode, remember, live life on purpose.